Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and I finally watched The Joker, and these are my honest thoughts about it. And I heard that a lot of people praise this movie, calling it a masterpiece and all of that, and so I came with very high expectations, and I think I was kind of disappointed, maybe because it was kind of overhyped, and I didn't hate it, I didn't dislike it, I thought it's a good movie, but it's not a masterpiece in my opinion, and it had some missed potential. Like I thought it could have been done better, especially toward the end of the movie. I expected a lot more from it and was left a little bit disappointed. And I'm going to explain exactly why, what kind of things I wanted to see, what I would have maybe put in there in the end. But first, let me mention all the good things about the movie, and there are many good things. The acting is excellent. This is something I agree with everybody. The acting was perfect. The way the film was filmed, how everything looked, how realistic and gritty it all was, all of that is great. I loved all of that. However, because this is supposed to be kind of a prequel to a comic book idea, so I do think maybe it should have been a little bit kind of over the top. And also I expected bigger things to happen, like more epic stuff to happen toward the end of the movie. They did that a little bit with all those clown riots and all of that, but I was disappointed that it wasn't really directly connected to the Joker character. Like some of the events did connect to him. It was kind of unintentionally inspired by him, and he unintentionally caused all kinds of events. But I dislike the fact that it's unintentional. That it was basically all a bunch of coincidences that happened. It's not really any kind of deliberate manipulation by him. I expected him, the Joker, to be a more intelligent character because the Joker is supposed to be a huge villain later. He's supposed to be the most dangerous enemy of Batman and all of that, and Batman is a guy with a lot of resources and a lot of intelligence. So his enemy would have to be someone with a lot of intelligence, someone who is very cunning and clever, even though he might be crazy and all of that, but he should still have abilities that would challenge Batman. And yet in this whole movie I didn't really feel that the character of Joker is intelligent. He's just a normal everyday guy, basically. Even less intelligent than average, I would say, because if he was intelligent, he would find ways to get more money, he would find ways to avoid the stuff that he's suffering from and all of that, and yet he seems to be even below average intelligence, and so I can't really understand how that's supposed to be that genius villain later. So that's something I disliked. And also the way that what he did influences the events in the city, it's all kind of just coincidences. It was never planned by him, it was never something that he did deliberately. It's just a bunch of coincidences, and so that's something I was disappointed by, because I think the Joker should be like the genius master manipulator. To be that great villain, he has to have some great intelligence, and so I think he should have been directly causing that kind of thing. Like I expected him to become like a terrorist in the end and doing stuff deliberately, and instead it just all happens around him kind of by accident. He never intended to set all those events in motion, and so that's disappointing. And also this movie kind of touched upon all kinds of political events, all kinds of similarities to real riots and stuff like that, but they didn't really go into any of it in depth. It was just kind of on the surface similarities, and so I don't even understand what's so controversial about this movie. I heard it's supposed to be very controversial, and when I heard that, I thought this movie might be going into all kinds of interesting issues that people can debate about, but it really didn't. It was all just very kind of surfacey, not really deep in any way. So I really don't understand what was so controversial about this movie, and it wasn't ultra violent. I saw plenty of movies much more violent and much weirder and crazier than this. And also that's something that disappointed me, because I thought maybe it's controversial because it has some ultra violence, some crazy stuff going on, but it doesn't. Like nothing really shocking happens. Okay, a few moments maybe, but nothing more than anything that happened, for example, in the Sopranos TV show. Just a normal crime drama. Nothing crazy happened, no extremely gory scenes. So there's a million movies much worse than this in that sense, and so what's so controversial in this one? So I really don't get it, and in fact I'm disappointed by it that it's not. Also, there was an attempt to surprise us with some kind of twist in the middle, but I didn't find it surprising at all, and I think it could have been done in a way that would be more surprising, or maybe more bizarre, more artistic, more ambiguous maybe, so they could have done it better, that whole thing with the twist in the middle. I was not impressed at all with it, I was not surprised, it wasn't that interesting, and I keep thinking of movies that did that much better. For example, Shutter Island had some amazing twists, and it was much more artistic, and it was much more interesting in the sense of us seeing everything from the point of view of a person with a mental illness. I think that's one of the best movies with that kind of idea. And even the movie Memento did that well in the way that whole movie was structured, made us feel like that character. And so those movies are examples of movies which are much more artistic and interesting in the way they did things, and much more surprising and all of that. And here we didn't really see anything clever like that. It was just kind of a basic, simplistic movie, I would say. And the main character also, I think, is too simplistic. The acting was excellent, but the way the character was written, I think, could have been and should have been more convoluted and more crazy and more bizarre, especially toward the end. The thing is that a character such as the Joker, he is scary because he's unpredictable, because he's so crazy that you can't really understand him, and because he might kind of flip out and do something totally unexpected, which might be even against his own interest. And so that's what makes that character truly scary, at least those versions of him that I thought were the best, like the Heath Ledger Joker, and even in some of the episodes of the Gotham TV show, the way that the Joker was kind of unpredictable. Because he's so crazy, you can't really understand him fully, and he might do something totally crazy that you don't expect. That's what makes him so scary more than the usual villain. And they didn't really do that in this movie. In this movie, it was all very kind of simplistic, very cause and effect, predictable, meaning someone insulted him, so he wants to take revenge on that person. So you might say, okay, it is crazy, a normal person wouldn't react so harshly to that, so that's crazy, fine. But I'm saying that truly crazy person would be someone that you would find much harder to understand his full motivations, that you won't even get why he's doing that, why he's acting that way. And some people compare this movie to the movie Taxi Driver, and I think even in that movie it was more crazy in the sense that you don't understand the main character, why he's acting that way, why he's doing that exactly. So I think it's kind of more crazy that way. And yet in this movie, Joker, you can totally understand everything he's doing, even though it is kind of over the top, but you can totally understand his reasoning for every action he takes. And so that's disappointing. I would have expected maybe it would be fine to start out that way, but maybe at some point toward the end of the movie to have him kind of flip out completely and to become really crazy, and then to do things that you can't expect, which are totally unpredictable. And that would be even scarier, I think. Even in the Gotham TV show, they did stuff like that. For example, there was an episode in which someone cut off his face to use it as a mask, and then the Joker wakes up and then finds that guy who stole his face and takes it back and kind of staples it back to his own face. And then he's not even angry at the guy who did that to him. So that was both funny and bizarre, because he's so crazy that he doesn't even care that if someone cuts off his face, he doesn't care, he finds it funny. So that I think is truly kind of bizarre and crazy and kind of funny in a way. So that's the perfect combination for this character. And so I expected to see more stuff like that, to have him at some point, maybe so much bad stuff keeps happening to him that after a certain point that yet another bad thing happens to him, maybe he just starts laughing at that, and then he won't even be angry at that, he will find it funny. So if someone does anything else to him, he will only find it even funnier. So I expected something like that to happen, and it didn't. All the way through it was very kind of dramatic, understandable, very human kind of character that you understand everything, his reasoning for everything he's doing. So I never had a moment in which he went totally nuts and totally crazy. Even Breaking Bad did that in one episode when Walter found out that Skyler gave all his money away to that guy that she had an affair with, and then he found out and he was in mortal danger in that moment, and yet still he kind of started laughing because it was so ridiculous that his desperation kind of turned into comedy for a moment. And so that was the kind of scene that would fit the Joker. So maybe that's the kind of scene that I think should have been here. Like at some point, maybe so much bad stuff keeps happening, but at some point when another bad thing happens, you just start laughing. Even in Game of Thrones there was a scene like that, I think with Arya, when she kept losing members of her family. Wherever she goes to meet up with her family, they all die, and then at some point she goes to her aunt, who also just died, and then someone informs her, and then she just starts laughing because that's something that kept happening. And so after a point it just became almost like a comedy. And so maybe that's something they should have done in this movie. Toward the end, when so many bad things keep happening to him, at some point he'll just say, okay, now it's funny, because it's so much that it's kind of it will drive him over the edge into not caring anymore. So at some point he'll simply not care anymore about bad things happening to him, and that can create that kind of bizarre Joker character that he's so over the top, so crazy that he doesn't care about anything. And he wouldn't even care about taking revenge against people who harmed him even. So just like in that scene in Gotham in which he's not even angry at the guy who stole his face, he finds it funny. That's the kind of Joker that I would like to see, the kind of Joker that is unpredictable. And if you think about it, that's the kind of villain that would be truly scary, because almost any villain has some kind of agenda. Like, you can reason with the villain up to a point, because there are things he wants, there are things he wants to achieve, so technically you should be able to negotiate even with the villain, even with the worst villain, you might still be kind of bargain with him. And yet with someone like the Joker, you can't even do that, because he doesn't really care about anything. He only wants chaos and all of that, and he's unpredictable, he's crazy. You cannot trust him, you cannot negotiate with him, there's absolutely no way to reach him, basically. And so that's what makes him so scary. Someone you can't really negotiate with, someone you cannot scare, he's not afraid of dying, so there's nothing to stop him from even blowing himself up if he has to, and so on. So that's why I liked that version of Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, because there he was that kind of character. There were scenes of him almost blowing himself up, there were scenes of him almost getting himself shot, and he didn't care. And at the same time, he was also a super genius who is a master manipulator and who can cause a whole bunch of mess in the whole city. And he pulls all the strings, and he has plans within plans and alternative plans, and so that's what makes him a challenging villain, someone that who is still clever, who is crazy and unpredictable, and also genius at the same time, and that's why he's such a dangerous villain. And so those elements were kind of missing here, because the Joker in this movie, he's not that intelligent, he's not a master manipulator. All the events that, even though some of the events were caused by him, but they were accidental, they were unintentional, simply a coincidence, and not something that he planned, not something that he wanted to set in motion. And so it makes it less interesting. It's basically like fate or something, that he just happened to be connected with those events, but he didn't inspire them deliberately, he didn't cause them, and so it's less interesting that way. And it's hard to imagine him being the villain who will oppose Batman, who is a billionaire with the most amazing resources and all of that. And so I can't buy that just a normal guy from the street who is crazy will be any kind of match to him. One way to explain all of this might be if I say because he was highly medicated, maybe it reduced his intelligence, and once he's off the meds, he'll become more intelligent. And also, if it's taking place about 20 years before Batman appears, maybe it's enough time for him to become a master criminal simply with experience. Maybe he'll become a huge criminal mastermind gradually, and so 20 years is a long time. So maybe he will develop as a villain in all that time and will become much more clever and cunning and manipulating, and so that can explain it maybe. But still, I would have rather to see all those elements of him right from the beginning, and that's what I expected from the trailers and all of that. We saw those leaked scenes of him running from the cops and being dressed as a clown, while other people are also dressed as a clown, and he uses that to his advantage. And so I thought he'll be kind of setting things up, setting all those events in motion in a clever way, that he would be a clever character. And I like clever characters, I like characters who achieve things with their mind. And yet here everything is kind of by accident, everything is a coincidence and not a direct result of something that he planned. So that's one of the reasons I found it a little bit disappointing. And also I think the movie could have been more interesting by making him crazier, at least in the end, to really show things from the perspective of a crazy person. They did that a little bit with all the hallucinations he sees and all of that. Maybe they should have done more of that, actually. Just like Shutter Island did that kind of stuff in a very good way. Maybe we should have seen stuff like that. Maybe we should have seen more bizarre and artistic kind of craziness. But we didn't. It was all very simplistic all the way through, and so that's why I don't agree that it's a masterpiece. Except maybe for the acting, I think that was very good, but it's not enough to carry the whole movie. Now, having said all of that, I do think we should get to understand some of his motivations. I mean, that's the whole point of doing an origin story or a prequel, to get to know the character before he became the iconic villain and to understand some of his motivations, some of the way that he thinks, why he became that way and all of that. And so that's why I said I'm fine with doing that for most of the movie. I only said that toward the end he should become more like that kind of Joker that is unpredictable. But for most of it I would be fine with understanding fully all his thoughts, all the way that he sees things, why he thinks the way he does and all of that. So I would be fine with it up to a point. And I did like the whole part with connecting him with Wayne to imply that he might be Bruce Wayne's half-brother and all of that, even though the film pretty much confirms that that was not the case. I actually think it would have been interesting to leave it a little bit ambiguous, to imply that maybe there was something to it, that it wasn't totally made up by his crazy mother, which the movie pretty much confirmed. However, I do like the fact that there is that connection now, that the Joker is basically jealous of Bruce Wayne. He thinks he should have been instead of him, and that could possibly explain why he would have kind of a vendetta against him later, or even kind of a love-hate connection, because there was that scene of him meeting him, and he seems to actually having kind of like affection toward the little Bruce Wayne. So maybe some of that will remain, and I do think that's interesting, and that's the reason that in a lot of comic book stories and other stories in general, a lot of times the villain and the hero have some kind of personal connection, that it's not just about the bigger events, the big scale, but it's also about some kind of personal connection. They were either best friends in the past, before one of them turned evil, or that they have some kind of family connection. Some kind of connection makes it more intimate, more interesting, more complex. And so I like the fact that they did add that into this movie, that connection, that the Joker, in his mind at least, will think that he might be Bruce Wayne's half-brother, or maybe he's jealous of him, maybe he likes him, maybe he loves him as a brother because he still thinks he might be his brother. Those kinds of elements kind of connect them and will make it more complex and interesting. And so I did kind of like that part, and I wish they would have left it a little bit more ambiguous even. So on the one hand, I do like the fact that they did explain his origin, why he is the way he is, why he thinks the way he does. On the other hand, I wish that at least in the end of the movie he would kind of flip out more than he did, and that he would become unpredictable and ununderstandable, and kind of more crazy in that sense, and not as simplistic, not just cause and effect which any human can understand, but something beyond that, something a little bit crazier. But again, because this is set 20 years before the Joker that meets Batman, then we can understand that maybe he kept changing even after that. Maybe he became more of a lunatic later on, maybe more evil, maybe more clever, more cunning, more like that classic Joker who will be a super villain basically. So that's my opinion on all of this. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we can discuss it in the comment section, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.